what is in New York right now? So we kind of broke 60, 65 maybe today. What kind of weather are you getting? Any warm? Any break from the cold?
Oh God, you have no idea. I mean, over the winter, just to add to that, I mean, my pipes froze. That's how cold it was up here. So I am thanking God that we're finally getting some decent weather. Believe me, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and you all,
Absolutely, you know.
yeah, and you guys were kind of conditioned for it. So for you to say your pipes froze, it got cold. it
Yeah,
got
it got really cold.
it got cold. Um, and do you have to commute into work, or do you get to work from wherever? How does that look like for you now, Michelle?
Yeah, well, my days are different. So, I mean, I work remotely mostly, but you know, I have to commute. I go meet clients. I mean, I go into the city twice a week. So, you know, I mean, that commute sometimes is trying to take me 3 hours to go back and forth. But you know what? I'm okay with it. You know, I sit in my car, I meditate to my music, find my happy space, you know, try to eliminate the road rage that's on the road and, you know, just kind of go with it. You know, I mean, I think, you know, for most of us in New York, we accept that traveling. You have
Yeah.
to when you live in a city like this.
Let me tell everybody who I'm talking to, and then I was going to tell you about some folks I ran into in New Hampshire. Um, Today, folks, on Second Chance Podcast, we're live from a near death experience to empowering businesses through cybersecurity and mindset shifts. Michele Novack is proof that resilience can redefine everything. In this episode, is going to share how overcoming medical and workplace challenges led her to discover her true purpose and hopefully help tell you how to do the same. Welcome, Michelle. Thank you for being with me tonight.
You welcome. Thanks, Jeff, for inviting me. I mean, I
Yeah,
appreciate giving me the opportunity to share my story out there
I
and
know. All right,
hopefully
so
inspire others.
yeah, that's what. So you were kind of get going. Just about a day in your life, and your commute and all those things. But what's that client day look like? What are you? What's a good Michelle day of work or when you're full on in getting stuff done mode. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, you know, Jeff, I mean, every day is a different day, but I think a full on day is when I really are able to ground the client, get them to understand the needs of what they need for their business, walk them through kind of all of the aspects, the prioritizing, especially from a cybersecurity space, because that's the role that I'm in. Right. A lot of people don't understand kind of the need there or why they need to do the things they need to do or invest or have a budget for it. So my days start off with, I always start off with my 5 P's of the day. I call them my 5 pillars of success. Basically, you know, what do your people look like? Right. I have that conversation with them. Talk to me about your people. Talk to me about your processes. You know, where you at in productivity? You know, and, you know, how do you take pride in the work that you do with your people? And then, you know, where's your peace of mind? Right. And let me give you that. And that's the conversation I have with really much all my clients.
Yeah.
Right. Getting to know them and understanding them, you know, and helping them operationally and strategically. You know, what we do every day is not just about business. It's, you know, you build relationships just like you and I are building right
Yeah.
now. And I think, you know, the most important thing people forget to do is prioritize their peace of mind. I'm always conscious of that every day, you know.
For the work
And
that you do, like that's a really good because you got peace in so many areas of your life, but man, you got your back door open on your mainframe here, right? You got your and that's a big deal. That's that's the way my brain got my brain. Because when you said that, I was like, wait a minute, man, let me audit my systems in my head real quick. Do I need to change my Wi-Fi password? It's been the same for a
Mhm.
while. But so like that's a really great approach because it is it and it for the and then your neck I can see your neck. It's not a sales pitch. It's just like you got some areas, you got some things that we need to address. That is a really cool approach, and it all right, and I'll be quiet. But it what it did for me is it took me from, yeah, I feel like I'm okay, to wait a minute, can I sleep good at night after what Michelle's pointed out to me?
Yeah, you know, listen, when you're talking about cybersecurity, it's real, right? I mean, 63% of small businesses are hacked in the first year. And out of those, 60% go out of business because of it. right?
Yeah.
If you're not prepared, I mean, and that's really the conversations I have, right? Like, what's important to you? People have to understand that their business is data, all of us, right? We collect emails, we collect this, we collect that on people, the information that we collect. I deal with a lot of accountants, CPAs, and I'll tell you, Jeff, right? I think in today's world, I always say security is insecure. There's no such thing as 100% security. Let's
Yeah.
face it. Right? Those that live in that bubble that feel that, they got the antivirus and it's going to protect them from everything, doesn't work that way. Right. And you mentioned something that I found intriguing. Maybe you should go change your Wi Fi password. Well, you know what? That's the first thing I tell them. Do you have the default passwords on your stuff?
That's right.
Because if you do, let's start there.
I had to update my printer, and you like the easiest thing to do when you're updating your printer is you Google what's the password, default password for the printer, and you get it, and it gives you like three say you hit it every time. But that's you're spot on with that. You and you also that ideal client. You said small business, so we're talking small business. Less than 50 employees, maybe less than 100 employees, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think the smallest business I have is less than 900, but I deal with a lot of people who are just one to five employees,
Yeah.
right? One to five employees, they don't have the resources, and I think that's what scares a lot of people, especially in small business when they hear about cybersecurity. First, they don't know about it, but then they also don't know how much it's going to cost them, and they're afraid. They're afraid to reach out or find out, or they just don't know where to begin. And those are the clients that I love because I get to teach. I'm a natural person that I love to share resources. I love to see people successful, and it's important to do that, like build a community and teach and build that knowledge. And that's kind of really my focus with everything that I do, because when you talk about these small businesses, sure, you can have 50 employees, doesn't mean you have everything in place, right? I've walked into businesses where they have 100 employees, they have no cybersecurity system set up, posture, infrastructure, and I look and I say, okay, you're making, 5 million a year, but you don't even have an IT person.
Yeah.
How does that work? Right.
Yeah.
So it happens. And I think, again, it's because the only thing people know about cybersecurity is ransomware and attacks. That's all they hear all day long. Oh, your account was hacked. AT&T was hacked. This company was hacked. Your information was, let go. But it's really much more than that. And I think, that's what I try to educate. I have a lot of free resources on my website. I share that with people, right? Go take this class. It's free. Read up on it. Understand it. Understand the things that you can do, right? The simple thing, change your password on your Wi-Fi.
Do folks
It
take
doesn't
time to
cost you
consume your?
anything.
Do you find? Here's something I noticed. You can give them free, they just don't consume it because that's something. Then they got to make time for or whatever. Do you? Um, because I do a lot of the same stuff, like free resources. Here's a guide. Have a conversation with me on, and even on some contract work that I do to where it doesn't cost the client anything. But when it gets to them having to get into the weeds and invest, it becomes a stopping point.
You know, I think you're spot on that, right? Like, yeah, we can offer them all these resources. And you're right. It's up to the individual to understand the benefit of it in doing it. Like you said, you offer free resources. I offer free resources. But one of the things that I do, and I love AI, right? Like I'm an AI person. I send them nice little reminders. They put it right in my AI. I'm like, send this person a reminder. Did you complete this? Did you complete this? And they'll keep bugging them every couple of days because I want to keep it line of sight. It's not just about you know, dropping it off, saying, here you go, right? Because that's where we fail, right? Like if we really want them to learn and educate them, we have to take the ownership for them as well, in some sense, because they're busy. We're busy. We're running businesses. You know that, right? Where do we have the time? We're working. I think that's, a myth that you say, oh, I'm going to start a small business. I'm going to, have life balance. And it doesn't happen that way. You're working sometimes 24 hours a day. I mean, I find myself, I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes and I'm working on clients. You got to balance it. But again, peace of mind, right?
Yeah, it's
So,
huge.
yeah, I mean, it happens.
So tell me, all right. So we're going to speak to the accountant. That you have some specialties of accountants and lawyers and folks that have they have sensitive, what I would say is more sensitive information. But I also say my mechanic down at the tire shop has a lot of my information, right? So it's still information. But when you get into accountants, bookkeepers, and just legal, most time you're going to attach a date of birth, social security number. The height of the requirements are going to go up. So let's
Yep.
talk about maybe that accountant to give some. I try to create the conversation, Michelle, to where the person, when they're listening to it driving down the road, they all of a sudden go, "Wait a minute, they're talking to me right now." I know how much change I've been able to put in my life when I'm riding down the road and I hear Michelle talking about, yeah, this is a peace of mind, and I go, "Wait a minute, right?" It's because it spoke to me. So that I wanted to put them in mind of what is that scenario that you see to where they've left the back door open and they're very they're in a high risk type situation. What do you see when you recognize that, and then how do you kind of help navigate the and mitigate the risk exposure?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? So when you're dealing with accountants, like you said, personal information, I mean, and it could happen anywhere. But for them, right, the critical point is protecting their systems and their data by making sure that they have tests done on their systems, they have some type of monitoring, right? If you don't know where your vulnerabilities are, you think you're hooked up to VPN and that nobody can get in. That's not the
Yeah.
case, right? And I see that all the time. I see that because I'll give you an example. I just had one of my clients call me the other day. They had a what they call a man in the middle attack. So basically, what that is someone interfered in between their Wi-Fi connection and their client. They were able to confiscate information and then send an email to that client for them to pay an invoice to my client at an account that never went there. Right. And you're not talking small bucks. I think the invoice was like 60 grand that this client paid thinking he was paying his accountant and he wasn't. Right. So it's simple things. It's, VPN, MFA, all of these things are great. Like I said, antivirus. I mean, all of these tools are there. But if you don't know what they do and what you're looking for, they're not going to help you. Right. And when I go into a client, right, the first thing I do is a risk assessment. That risk assessment, it's an in-depth look at every system you have, what you're connected to, your IP addresses, everything you have, your emails, right? Because 93% of attacks or ransomware come from emails. People click on emails. We love to click on the pictures. We love to click on those emails, but we don't necessarily read them. And we also trust, we're trusting people, right? So, you hear all the time, oh, I got an email, I clicked on it, and all of a sudden my screen went black. Well, that's because you probably saw something from maybe, and I hate to call out maybe a bank, right? Your bank that
Yeah.
you use saying,
Yeah.
oh, emergency or urgent. You know, it's urgent communication. You have to update your password or do whatever. And you don't really look at it. And there's a lot of typos, or, you can kind of pick it up if you start watching that stuff. And that's where training comes in, right? Do training on yourself, do employee training. And now you're hacked, right? It's over. Once they get in, they're in. And, you talk about that type of thing, right? You've got major corporations, look at CrowdStrike,
Yeah.
major corporation, right? Look what happened. So, and these are companies that are built, right, to protect. And they have the infrastructure, they have the departments, they have the IT, they have the money. It can happen anywhere, and I don't say it to scare you, but, for a small business person, and especially accountants and, lawyers, attorneys, insurance brokers, those are kind of who I deal with a lot. A lot of them will come back to me and they'll say, you're like a blessing. Like I wouldn't have known what I
Yeah.
didn't know unless I asked. And again, a lot of the times they learn so much just on the little things that they can take, the little steps. But the first key is getting an assessment done. Like understand what it is that you need to protect and then go from there. you
I had
know?
a, I got an email leading into mine and your conversation. I didn't get the spam email, but a service provider of a company that I work with, where I'm on their email chain, they had someone had cloned their email, made an email
Mm,
address, and then sent it out as if they were, hey, I'm with the company, and then here's some, here's the link for you to up. This is what you just said, and I know the company. Have worked with them, and I was like, oh, even not, just thinking about our conversation coming up, but from the criminal mind that goes on in my head sometimes. I was a police officer, so when I was a police officer, the easiest way to solve cases, you kind of let your brain work on the criminal side. But my criminal mind was like, oh, that's a good one. Because then it was like, if you click this, get with us, immediately, so we can help you just start mitigating the your exposures, because it was efficient, or whatever that new terms that we
efficient.
use is. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting that you come from law enforcement. When I'm a cyber engineer, right? So,
yeah,
obviously the extent of my training, I had to go through a lot of forensics, understand it. I'm an ethical hacker, right?
yeah, yep,
And there's a big difference between being an ethical hacker. So I need to know that because I need to know how they can get in and penetrate those systems.
yep,
And that's why we learn that, right? To help protect. But the biggest problem that we have out there today is AI.
yeah.
With the computer systems, and you talk about quantum computing, right? Like quantum computing itself, in 10 years, you're going to see a transition like you've never seen in technology with quantum computing.
I don't know that
You
it'll
know,
take 10 years though. I think it's coming faster, just because of.
tho-
You think it'll be that long?
Well, they're starting to integrate it now. That's the new upcoming AI, right? You're going to see the next phase. It was AI, and now it's quantum computing. The talk on the scene in the cyber world is quantum, right?
Yeah.
So as you start to hear them talk now in the preliminaries, and a lot of these companies are starting to adapt to this quantum computing, you're going to see a big shift in what these criminals can do, unfortunately. And our job is to get ahead of it and understand it ahead of time. And
So
that's
that
the
takes. That's what I was going to ask you to do, Michelle, for our listeners, and even for myself. Explain that difference. Explain that jump of what your expectations are going, or what you anticipate is going to, with quantum and the quantum computing, and what it's going to be able to, how it's going to help us. How it's going to help us, right? But then also some of the risk and exposures that's going to come with that. Can you give us some ideas of what that's going to look like from just an everyday user standpoint?
Yeah, when I think about quantum computing, and I'm not the expert in quantum computing, right? But what I will tell you is these are massive. I mean, you're talking statewide, like machines that are learning at milliseconds how to process things, right? And it's machine learning, and it learns itself, and it continues to learn itself, right? Whereas you become obsolete. You do. AI can give you the answers, right? Because it goes through all these different data points and collects it all. But when you're talking about like quantum computing, like think about the IRS, they have Watson, right?
Yeah.
That thing is diving in and chewing up information, spitting out, and, audit this one. But quantum computing in itself, the technology behind it, I mean, you're talking about flying sources type stuff. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say it, but
No, no, no.
it's
You,
it's
that's
already
that's
there.
where I
That
think it takes us,
technology,
right? Yes, I
it's
think it
already
takes us
there.
to just new heights of things that we're not able to necessarily process, just because our own limitations, and the limitations we self-impose over ourselves. I say this because I sat on a panel today. It was about agriculture. And sometimes you think of agriculture, you think very simple. I'm going to go
It's not.
feed. So this one guy, man, he was totally thinking out of the box in his approach, and it really got me. I pointed it out. I'm like, folks, there's and this is going to be something that's just going to amplify. Really cool.
Yeah,
Um,
when you think about it, so tie quantum computer into the agriculture world, right?
yeah, yeah,
Think about it. I mean, they can have systems that grow, right, and monitor, and the right temperatures. You see that now, right? They have these rooms. You walk into them, and that's why people are, they're growing today, you know. But it's like on steroids,
yeah, yeah,
if you would, and it's going to be able to do mass computing, which is a lot different than what we're used to today. I mean, but the power that it takes. And that's why I say, the next 10 years will be a transition. We're already using quantum computing to a certain level. But when you look at the next 10 years in all of technology, right? Look where we've come in the last 10 and where we're going in the next 10. I mean, I think about pen testing, right? When I go in and I have to pen test the system and I'm hacking and I'm doing things and I'm trying to get to, the level that I need to get the information to see if I can get through your system. That thing will be able to do it for me in a minute,
Yeah.
which would take me 6 hours, right?
Yeah.
So, the OSNet, when you're talking about stuff like that, there's so many levels of um, cyber and then the security levels, as you know, that just it'll tick all the boxes immediately. And we're seeing that with parts of AI and some of the new stuff that is coming out there. I'm a favor of a couple of different companies out there. I think they have really great technology and their advancements are wonderful. But again, going back to like the small business person, they don't even know
No.
what a hack is. You know what I mean? And
No.
they've probably been hacked. And what they have to understand, and this is the one thing I'll say to someone who's just starting out their business, you don't know what you don't know. You only know 20% of what somebody else doesn't know. And that's what I always tell everybody, right? So when I'm sharing with you, I'm sharing the 20% knowledge that I have, but you have 20% knowledge that somebody else doesn't have. So it's important to kind of get there and understand that and do what you need to do for your business. If your business is that important to you, you have to look at protecting that at all costs. Just like if you would install cameras, right? You're in a retail space, you're going to install cameras, right? You're going to make sure that your POS and they're not going to get hacked, right? Or that somebody hasn't put a scammer on an ATM, or you're, swiping your card at, the which they love to do at the pump, right? At your gas stations.
Yeah.
They love to put those little skimming machines on, you know. So we've all been a victim, even myself. I mean, I've gotten scammed. I've gotten my, my debit cards, credit card hacked. You're not going to control it. The idea is to prevent it as much as you can and then be prepared if it does happen. Because I think that's the downfall there, Jeff. A lot of people, they don't know what to do and they don't know the law. They don't know the requirements when you
No.
are hacked and what you do, the reporting around it, what you're required to do, and then getting your systems up. I'll give you an example. I was just on a call, a podcast, I think it was last week. And the host was sharing with me that they had over 300 websites on, I think it was WordPress. And when WordPress got hacked last year, their 300 websites went down.
Yeah.
And he was at a conference and he couldn't get any of his stuff up. And he was sharing the story with me, like we just were talking. And he was like, I wish I would have known what I would have known.
Yeah.
He goes, because I would have done something different. Now, he learned obviously through that, but his websites were down for 3 or 4 days. Just think about how much some people go down for weeks. If you're not prepared, if your website's your business, you're done, right? Like how much money are you losing? Not only that, your clients' trust, your reputation. So, I mean, those are things you really have to think about, right? Like, and not be afraid. No, it doesn't cost that much. I mean, I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to spend thousands and thousands and thousands. There's things out there that you can put into place that subscription wise, again, it doesn't have to be free. And most cybersecurity is not free, right? I will do certain things for certain companies because again, there's a need. It's more of me protecting and helping protect them, I think, than anything else. But it's kind of the way I look at it,
No, it's a great approach. I think you'll find I get to teach AI. I get to teach AI in different rooms and not just my local rooms. I get to fly. I'm in different areas and um, there's a lot of just resistance or hesitancy to, and I'm speaking to your client. I'm speaking to the solopreneur, the person with 1 to 5,
Mhm.
who I sat down with them when I'm like, hey, what's your biggest buy? I can't keep up with social media and this and this. And I go, okay, look. here's this prompt, cut and paste, and watch what happens. And they're like, oh my God, this is great. I'm afraid it's going to take me over the world. I think it's going. So I give them this amazing opportunity. So you'll hear like there's a big awareness around AI, and we're kind of in an awareness phase of. It surprised me because I love tech. I love this conversation. I geek out on just the possibilities. And when you start talking about quantum, the little my guest the other day, the Jetson cartoon goes off, and that I grew up on goes off in my head. Um, I
We're
didn't.
there already.
Yes, I didn't.
Rosie the robot.
I didn't realize how much pushback that something that was intent that can help and what it can do, how much pushback it was going to get from the folks that were and I use this Michelle, this is how I kind of frame it is I'm like, how many of you were around when the internet came out? Come on now, raise your hands, and then did you hear the kind of like, it's just a fad, it's going to go away. Newspapers will always rule the day. And I hold my phone up and I go, and now we're here. And if you
Right.
can't consume it here, we don't consume it at all, basically. I watch my big TV very little now because I consume everything I need to. And I go back and then we walk through the timeline of internet, our first phones, then into social media marketing, which was a separate phase. And then
Right.
on to our smartphones that we have now. And now we're on this next revolution. That's getting ready to be introduced is AI. And then, like you said, we're making this jump to quantum computing very, very quick after that. And so the folks that I think that are earlier adopters and get their heads wrapped around it, their businesses are going to
Survive.
yeah, they're going to survive. They're going to like. I remember the folks that was, that mom and pop store that had so much potential to become an e-commerce brand and just didn't know. I ain't gonna do it. I ain't talking to nobody, Michelle. I don't want no computers in here. I don't need any of that. It's just I don't. And they were ultimately closed or bought up by a bigger company that was online.
It's interesting that you say that. It's not only mom and pop stores, right? Like you take a
Yeah,
look at the big retailers, right? Look at the
that's right.
early adopters onto the internet and moving all their products on the internet. They're still around. And what
Yeah,
about the ones that didn't do that? They're not here, right? We know them, right? And I think it's very important that adoption early on, you got to go with it, right? Listen, you and I are probably about the same age, right? We grew up in a whole different time era. I used to play my Atari,
that's right.
and those were like the first computers, right? But I'll say this, Jeff, and you hit on a point. I wrote a book. It's called Overcoming the Fear of Entrepreneurship and Solopreneurship, right? And transforming to be a game changer. I just put it out there. And that it's really about why do we have brilliant ideas, right? And we sit in silence, like, what needs to be done, but you're afraid. Like, what's stopping you? What's stopping that mom and pop to grow, right? Like, or what's stopping that person from taking and learning your AI? I use AI in my business to do all my social media. I don't have the time,
Yeah,
right? And you it's not only that, it's cost effective, right? And I think that's what scares people the most, that they're going to be out of work. I think, I tried to think about it. I'm like, what makes people hesitant about learning technology and getting on board? And really it's within, right? Like, are we going to be replaced? And the reality is computers will be able to do a lot, but you're always going to need people no matter what. A computer is not going to think the way, you know, Jeff thought when he was a cop, right?
yeah.
You're not going to be able to look at all those angles. No matter how much you teach that computer, yeah, it's going to give you an assessment. It'll spit out. But even me, when I do my assessments, it's not looking at everything. I still need to look into that system and understand where those gaps could be and look for them.
I
So
think the computer will do a great job at networking with each other. The computers, but you and I, our relationship building and our ability to just want to conduct transactions or business with one another because we like each other's mission. And we want to come alongside and complement each other's brand. I think you and I will always be in the relationship business. There's going to be no replacement for just human equity and creating our relationships with people in life and all the stuff we do. I think over here you're going to have computers create their own relationships with other computers, but it's not going to affect you and I. I think it's going to be growing over there, and then you and I will be being able to focus. And I tell people this. What's the one thing you hate doing every day? One lady one day was like, I hate creating emails, Jeff. I'm like, okay. Yeah, like, said, and her boss was like, well, that's her job. And I go, is her job to create the email or reach the people the email is intended for? And he was
Good
like,
point.
and he got this light bulb moment. And I go, I would rather her pick the phone up and be like, Sally, I hadn't talked to you in a few weeks. You hadn't opened up any of my emails because I can see when you open them. What's going on? What's going on in your world? I would rather her
Right.
do that than I would beat her head against the wall trying to craft an email.
You know what it is? We've made it very easy. Like, you call all the businesses today, they have the IVR, click one, click two. You're talking to
Yeah.
a bot now, right? You know, we as a world in this society, and I'll just say this, it's like we're almost kind of isolating ourselves. And you're seeing more and more, Jeff, of this, like where a lot of people that I speak to, we want to get back to the community. We want to have these relationships, these conversations with people like you and I, because we need that. We've relied so much on technology in a sense to do all of these wonderful things for us, and it's great, but then you don't have connections anymore, right? And that's where I think the hardest part of doing any business, and that's why I'm very diligent about no matter what, I'm going to visit you. If you're in a different state, whatever. If I'm in that state, I'm coming to see you. And I think it's important that, we tie it all together, Jeff. I mean, fear holds everybody back. Overcoming that
Mm.
fear is just in your mind. And that's what I tell you. I mean, you mentioned something earlier. I mean, I had a life death experience 2 years ago. They
Yeah, tell me
literally
about it.
resuscitated me.
Tell
I was
me,
resuscitated.
tell us about that. That's got to be a life changer, like a great second chance moment. Michelle Novack, there's no better one than hearing you were resuscitated. Walk us through that.
You know, I have to say, I'm a big faith person, right? Like,
Yeah.
I do have a second chance at life. And, I mean, I was very lucky that my husband was there at the time it happened, because if I was alone, I wouldn't be here. I mean, I died in front of him. And, to this day, he's always traumatized. You okay? You okay? You okay? So it's not only changes us, right? It not only changes us, but it changes the people that, witness something like that as well. But I remember waking up in the hospital. I didn't even know where I was. And I'm like, where am I? Everybody was standing around, like, my sisters, this, that. And I'm like, what's happening? And I couldn't speak because I didn't know what was going on. I had literally like bit my tongue in half, like it was a crazy moment. And, I just remember like taking it all in and looking around and being like, what's happening? You know what I mean? And then I kind of sat back, like after, being in the hospital for a few weeks, I sat back and like that really gave me time to kind of say, slow it down. What's important. You gotta, and that's where I said peace of mind. I added that into my 5 pillars, peace of mind.
Yeah.
Like there is nothing more important than your family, your health. Money can't buy you happiness. That's a myth. Okay. Those two things are the most important thing. And then love of God. I say that all the time, right? I'm a big faith person. Some people may get offended. That's on them. That's what I always say. I have to be true to myself and be authentic.
No,
But it
hey,
really kind of
listen. You
gave
don't
me
don't
a chance to kind of
you don't be
swoop
offended by that.
around.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
don't worry about those that are offended. They get to do what they want to do, and that's okay.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
this is your story, right? And you get to be that person of faith, and that's what I always try to tell people. You be you, I'll be me, you be them. They can be them. Um, but like this is a really and what happened?
You know, I think I got scared,
Yeah,
right? I was scared. Like, is this going to happen? When is it going to happen again? And you live through that for the first like 6 months. Even now, uh, and I'll share. I have very bad diabetes, and that's what
Yeah.
caused it, right? And it's a very I've lived with it for very long, so obviously it wasn't something that I was expecting to happen. And people that were around me, I think the worst thing that you could do for somebody when they go through something like that is, are you okay? Are you okay? Like, I got to the point where I'm like, listen, I'm all right. I'm going to be all right. I'm here because I need to change the way I look at things. I need to change my life. I need to change my lifestyle. But most importantly, I have to do something else. I almost felt like there was something else I was missing in my life that I needed to give back and do more of giving back. And that's kind of where it set me on the journey to start writing a book and writing my first book, my second book, my third book, because I said, how can I give back? Like I started mentoring, a young woman in cyber. I just had a girl email me the other day, I got my job. And, I've been mentoring her, like she got her first job in cyber and she was struggling with it. MIT student, right? Like
Yeah.
you think about that. And that's kind of what I took away from that whole experience. It was, how can I create impactful collaborations, like, and share my journey to maybe inspire somebody else to do something before it's too late, right? Because, my mother used to say, today is Sunday, but you never know about Monday,
Oh.
and it's always kept in the back of my mind. And it's funny that you think like that, but, all of us have to have some kind of wake up call. I think everybody goes through a journey where you have that one moment in your life and you have that wake up call and you start reassessing your life. And that's kind of what happened, right? And it was a good thing. I mean, do I want to die? No. But did it take me to almost die to stop, pause, and, do that? Yeah. And that's okay. Right. I'm here to talk about it. Not many people get that chance again. Right, Jeff?
No, absolutely not. I've been on that side. I've gotten the shock. I've and the numbers that I held their hands as they passed on, um, uh, way outnumbered the number that came back, and continued to live. Just because,
Yeah.
right? Not because of advanced whatever, just because of where they were in their situation. Sometimes they were elderly, sometimes, all the factors that come into it. And every now and then we had the stars were on our side and your side, or that person's side, of where we were supposed to be at the exact time and hit at the right time, right? And here they come back.
True.
I'm like, hey, come back, you're back. Well, it was like,
It's true.
so listen, this is what the one guy, man, that we had checked him. I was like, he comes back and we had, most time if you had time, you could, you try to medicate him. Like this guy was like, he's like, he get his words were, Jeff, I don't feel so good. And I do a Thursday night live with my friend Billy. Billy's in the emergency room with me. And I don't think Billy remembers this one because he did way more of this stuff than I did. And the guy goes, Jeff, I don't feel so good. And I looked, and Billy's looking at the monitor, and it goes the rhythm that, it's oh crap, it's a flutter. It's one of them I can't remember. I get all of them mixed up now, but it's one you can shock. You can't shock all of them, but it's a rhythm or electro. So Billy shocks him, and we shock him at like maybe three times at the most.
Wow.
And every time we would shock him, he would yell. He'd be like, ah. And so it's just like this real life moment of us in the immersion room. And finally, last time it goes beep, just like you see on TV, beep, beep. And the guy's sitting there and he opened his eyes. I'm like, dude, you're back. Come here, stay with me, talk to me, talk. I said, what? And I get Michelle. I said, what'd you see? Tell me, hey, what'd you see? Come on, did you see anything? You said, come back to this light, but tell me, did you see anything? And he's like, oh my God, what happened? What happened? Um, but I was like, come here, did you see? Keep talking to me, but tell me what you saw. What did you see?
It's funny. And like, people would ask me that too. They're like, well, did you see a white light? I said, I don't remember anything. I didn't.
Yeah.
My husband said what happened is I sat up in bed. It was like 2 a.m. in the morning. He goes, you said, I don't feel good. He goes, I went into the kitchen to go get you juice. I came back and that was it. I was on the floor, like
Yeah.
seizing, and then I died. Like, and he was freaking out. I mean, I was down, but it's funny, I want to just go back to kind of what you've experienced. And I'm going to throw this
Yeah.
back on you. I know this is your show, but
That's all right. Yeah, you're good.
you were given those opportunities, right, to be there. It was a
Absolutely.
meaning. There was a reason for you to be there. And I believe that, like, we all have that reason
Yeah.
for whatever reason, to be people come in and out of your life no matter what, for whatever reason it is meant to be. It could be 2
Yeah.
minutes, it could be 50 seconds, it could be a lifetime.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, right? I mean, I have friends of mine for 30 years. A lot of people don't have even one friend for 20 minutes. So, count your blessings. And, like you said, look at that guy, look at that experience you just shared. That it's amazing. You know what I mean?
I
And
say your
they
words.
resuscitated me. I don't know what happened, but I'm sure they had to use the paddles
You,
on me.
no, but listen, you
I
woke
remember
up like
not being happy.
you had this you second chance. You and this is what my clarity was, just like you point out to me. And it's easy for you to point this out now. Michelle, before may have not been as easy to point out, like I'm here to help. I'm here to make a difference. You woke, came back with like, wait a minute here, there's something bigger than me. And
Yep.
all this stuff. So I've had those moments of really sitting down in my own reflections and saying, I'm chasing the wrong thing. And I'm going to start paying attention to opportunities. And I'm going to start stopping when I get to have this amazing conversation and like, all right, what lesson am I covering here? Whose story am I amplifying? And um,
Mm,
I
interesting.
really, yeah, I really pay The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. If you have opportunity, if you've never read it, based on what you've experienced, very neat book that will help complement just some of just the way he approaches stuff. And one of his biggest things is like people that are going through rough times. It's like it's not rough. It's what you asked to do. You plan this with God or the universe, whoever, but you asked to do this, and you're here in that struggle to learn a specific lesson. So don't get mad at it. And like for you, was the clarity of the hell you had been living or the life you'd been living, whatever that looked like. And you when you turn this around, you're like, wait a minute, hang on here. I figured some things out, and we're going to start doing
Yep.
things differently. And it's just cool because there's just as many people that probably in your life that are like, well, she changed after she had that incident. She changed. You damn right, I changed.
That's
Um,
right.
right, you did, because
I'm going to
oh
tell
my
you why,
gosh,
though. And I have another book that I wrote. The first book I wrote is called Shifting Your Mindset to 21 Days of Abundance. And that
yeah,
book was about my own personal journey, about dying, but also a lot of things from childhood and things that affect you and how you make those decisions. And people don't realize that everything that comes into your life, you manifest it. And I believe that, right? Like it's the choices you make every day.
yeah.
You have a choice
Was
every minute of the
um
day.
was
And
childhood
people
was
have to
childhood
understand
rough?
that.
Was your
What?
childhood rough, or what was that? Touch on that for me
Yeah,
real
I
quick.
mean, listen, I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth, right? Like
Yeah.
I struggled. And I came from my mother and father were divorced at a very young age. My father was an ex-Vietnam vet,
Mm,
and he had PSTD. It was a
yep.
very it was a hostile a hostile environment in my home for my father. And I love him dearly. I mean, they're both not here with me anymore, unfortunately. But what I learned from that was you become that person that you think your parents want you to be.
Mm,
And you kind of mimic that. And I think going through that experience, I realized that I am my own person. I have to love myself first, right? I'm a natural giver. I love giving. I love seeing people happy, but I gave so much of myself that I didn't take care of myself. And I think that was the one lesson that I had to learn. And it's tough love on yourself. And when you say that, it's not that I wasn't given in a sense, but there was no self-fulfillment. My book, I wrote in there, I dedicated it and I said, one thing I learned was loving myself first. And once you love yourself, you can love others. And I think that that was the hardest part, right? We all have our childhoods and, some of them are off. And I grew up in the 80s in New York.
yeah.
I won't get into that, but, I've been around. So, and I have nothing to be ashamed of. I'm proud of everything I went through. I have no regrets. Like, people say, oh my God, if I tell them a story and I'm like, what's so surprising about it? And sorry that you didn't have that experience because maybe you'd be a different person.
You
I
you
don't
hit
know.
it with that
Maybe
forgiving.
that's harsh, but
Yeah. When you get into some of the childhood, my friend Jody Peterman, who's a guest, her episode's coming out. We didn't do that one live, but she turned me on to the Ho'oponopono prayer, and It's
Mm.
have you ever heard of that one?
I've heard of it. I don't know it that well, but I
So
have heard of it.
it's really good on childhood. First off, I wanted to point out for our guests when we talk about. I have friends that were Vietnam vets. I have friends that you're talking about. My episode that comes out tomorrow is for on. Gosh, I'll tell you his name in a second. But he did a book on a team that was in Vietnam, and
Wow.
he pulled them in. And some of the guys were still alive, and he wrote their story. So really great timing to tee this up since we're live, is we didn't know what PTSD was then. We call it that now, but the hell that our Vietnam veterans went through and came
Right.
home with is it was severely overlooked. And um, so just I wanted to
Yeah.
put that in perspective for your dad and just knowing
Mhm.
how what that hell may have been like for you. Just what we didn't treat PTSD as what we do now, where we find solutions at times. But there was unnecessary because we didn't know what we didn't know
Right.
for war fighters. But so I just wanted to point that out to you. But anyway, Ho'opono is like going back to that childhood moment, and you basically when you have that moment. Something that maybe keeps reoccurring in your head, right? Some thought, and you're like, God, why does this keep? And you just acknowledge it, and then you say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And
Mhm.
you're basically telling that to your older self or your younger self that didn't know any better, didn't know the things that Michelle knows now. So you just kind of, and I, man, she told me that, and I stumbled upon another guy that talked about it, and she gave it to me. He really helped me drive it home in the way he approached it. He goes, think about from the time you were 1 to 5 years old. Think about that kid right there, and just and you would just find. I remember. So around this time, Michelle, talk about random. My mom had gave me an old picture book of me as a kid, and I didn't. I was like you. I didn't grow up in the most. I lived with my aunt, and it was and my grandfather. He liked to do crazy things, shoot at us and stuff like that. And,
It's
um,
okay. Crazy is good, I
yeah,
always say.
yeah, but like, and we were told, hey, this is the way everybody else is living too. Turns out they weren't. But so I was flipping through there, and I have different times in my life to where something significant happened as a kid, and I was stopping. I looked at that picture, and I was like, oh. And I
Mm.
said, I went just kind of had that kid in my mind, and just I remembered where he was in life. So think about that sometimes when as you're going through your life or whatever. Don't discount that because it's been like I don't, sometimes it's mindset and reframing, but man, it's been something that I've deployed in the last 45 days. I think I sleep better. If I wake up, my mind won't shut down because I'm used to chaos. When I wake up in the middle of the night, if I get startled awake like I used to do, I'll just start repeating that in my head, do some breath work with it, and I'll doze back off and go right back to sleep. And generally find a decent, a dream that is not unpleasant, where I'm talking
Right.
to an old friend or something or other, right? But so don't. I'm glad I got to share that with you. Um,
Yeah, and I'm happy you did, Jeff, because you said something that was interesting. It is about forgiving yourself, right?
yeah,
And releasing it. And that's really what it's all about. And that's what that book was about for me. I had to understand why my parents were the way they were. And there's no blame there. I understood it and it helped me understand why things happened in my entire life, like why I kept repeating the same patterns in my life and or these things. Because again, it's all the kind of way you are raised, right? That has a big factor in it, and the people that you're raised with. But it doesn't mean that that has to stay that way. And forgiving yourself first, and that's why I said you got to love yourself, right? And it comes with forgiveness. A lot of people stay angry, and
yes,
that's what traumatizes them. It traumatizes them, Jeff. And I hope to God that people find that peace. I always say that, find your peace, find what makes you happy, because it's hard.
it's
It's not that easy.
it's yeah, it's a little easier, I think, coming from your perspective and my perspective. If you're in the middle of it, it's hard to find that. And I think sometimes that's why I enjoy these conversations and how they evolve into these second chances, like what you experienced, because there's somebody going through it. They're getting ready to go through it, and I speak to this a lot. It was one of my struggles was trying to find someone who had walked and related to what I had walked, the path that I had been on, and that person didn't exist then. Now I do. And I don't want
Yes.
anybody that's experiencing same thing for you. Someone who's not necessarily maybe taking the best care of themselves, and they're not paying attention to their health, and they're maybe living in a little more of a selfish lifestyle. You have this gift now that where you're able to go out and not only help everybody get the mainframes in order, but you can you can also really inspire them with your story. And I think for you to end up with me tonight to have this conversation is a testament to that. So I
Thank you.
can't. Will you tell everyone how they can get in touch with you? Listen, we went down a rabbit hole there. Listen, business owners,
It's
turn this
okay.
back up. Turn this back up, business owners, because we're going to speak to you for a second. You need to get your. This is a big deal. I work with small business owners day in and day out. That this is an area um, that I probably don't speak enough to them because of some of the technology that they have, whether it be a Square or whatever. But if you're growing and you're handling data internally, Michelle, you need to connect with Michelle. So Michelle, tell us just how you like for folks to get in touch with you, and then leave us with how we can get your books too, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for giving me that opening. But you can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. Certainly find me there. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. Through my website. I saw you popped it up on the screen for me. So thanks for that. So
Yeah,
certainly through my website at any time. But you can also pick up the phone, call me, email me. I'm all over. Right. And I always answer the calls. Like I will get back to you. My books are on Kindle. Right. So, I mean, you can find those books on Kindle. I have about 6 or 7 of them. But again, they're all about personal journeys, right? And just life lessons, for my own life. And the one book, though, is work. I will tell you that. It's you want to change, it's really taking a hard look at yourself.
yeah,
And that's the tough book. And that book that, shifting your mindset is about you digging into you, looking in a mirror and saying, who am I? And it's
yeah,
not an easy journey because you're going to uncover layers of yourself that again, I was probably meant to go down this rabbit hole with you, right? Because
yeah,
somebody out there needs to hear this. So I'm glad that we
absolutely.
did it.
Well, I also will close with this, and I use this sparingly, but always appropriately. You also get to join my Curse Breakers team. That's one of the things I like speaking to, and I got some different little content. My main breaking the curse theme right now has been the power of the puzzle. That's kind of the puzzle of life, and then
Mm,
uh, um, you wear the title of hope dealer because your story is so inspiring, and the gift that you've been given, and be able to go out and reach and talk and touch and just tell people what you experienced and how that's changed you into this force of just wanting to help and leave that legacy behind in that manner of just touching those. It's small, it ain't, it's here, it's there, it's that lady that just passed that where you got that call today, and it's person over here who
that's
may
right.
have not necessarily had that hope that you was able to give them. So that's congratulations on that. That's a big deal. But
No, thank you.
yeah, I can't thank you for being with me tonight. I appreciate you, and I can't wait to have you back on in the future. And let's continue the
Absolutely.
conversation. Yeah, thank you.
I thank you so much, Jeff, and I appreciate it. Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.